Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today because we have some very exciting General Hospital news to talk about, and it's definitely worth the wait. Brook was not prepared for the kind of fear that settled into her heart once the memory began to sharpen. At first it was only a troubling feeling, the kind that comes without warning and refuses to go away. Then little details started returning to her one by one. The wine before she left home, the late drive to Charlie's pub, the darkness of the road, the sound of her own horn breaking through the night, the sudden movement of a car in front of her, the desperate turn of the wheel. When all those pieces began to come together, Brook could no longer hide from the possibility that terrified her most. She may have played a part in the crash that left Jordan and Curtis fighting for their future. That thought alone was enough to shake her, but what truly broke her sense of peace was knowing that if the police uncovered the truth, her life could fall apart in a single moment. For Brook this was no longer only about guilt or fear of punishment. Everything had become far more painful now that Phoebe was in her life. The child had given her a new sense of purpose, a reason to be softer, steadier, and more careful with every choice she made. Phoebe was no longer just a child in need of love. She had become the center of Brook emotional world, the fragile light she could not bear to lose. That is why the idea of prison felt unbearable. It was not only the image of steel bars and public shame that haunted her, it was the image of a little girl left behind, confused and alone, forced to grow up without the woman who had promised to protect her. In Brook mind, prison did not simply mean punishment. It meant turning Phoebe into an orphan all over again, and that fear was more than she could carry calmly. What makes this situation even more heartbreaking is that Brook is not a cold woman trying to escape responsibility without feeling anything. She is frightened because she feels too much. She understands what is at stake. She understands what one reckless night may have cost other people. Jordan nearly lost her life. Curtis could have lost everything. Families were pushed to the edge because of what happened on that road. And now Brook must live with the awful possibility that while others were suffering in hospital rooms and waiting areas, she was still trying to hold herself together without fully admitting what she may have done. That kind of guilt does not stay quiet. It grows heavier. It changes the way a person breathes, sleeps, and thinks. It turns every police question into a threat and every memory into a wound. The tragedy becomes even deeper because Brook fear is not the only danger closing in around her. Just when she is already terrified that the investigation may expose her, a new storm begins to rise. Phoebe's biological father appears and demands to take his daughter back. That twist changes everything. It is no longer only the law that threatens Brook future as a mother. Now blood ties, legal claims, and emotional bonds are all colliding at once. Brook may have believed that the worst thing possible would be a prison sentence, but losing Phoebe to her biological father could wound her in a different and even more personal way. Prison would take away her freedom, but this new fight could take away her heart. The cruel timing makes it all feel even more dramatic, as if the life she was trying so hard to build is being attacked from every side at once. There is also something painfully symbolic in the way Brook secret and her motherhood are colliding. On one side is the woman she was that night, impulsive, careless, shaken, and not fully in control. On the other side is the woman she wants to be now, protective, devoted, and ready to give a child the safe home she never wants Phoebe to lose. Those two versions of Brook are now crashing into each other just as violently as the cars on that dark road. She wants to move forward into a better life, but the past is reaching back for her before she can get there. That makes her story more than a simple tale of guilt. It becomes a story about whether a person can truly outrun one terrible mistake, when that mistake threatens to destroy the very future she is trying to protect. Another layer that makes this story compelling is the uncertainty surrounding what really happened that night. Danny and Charlotte had their own crash. Jordan and Curtis had theirs. The two accidents happened on the same night, yet they did not collide head-on. That leaves room for confusion, for hidden connections, and for painful misunderstandings. If Brook really did swerve, honk, or force another driver into a dangerous reaction, then the truth may not be simple or clean. It may not look like a deliberate crime, but that will not make the consequences any less devastating. Sometimes the most terrible damage comes not from evil intentions, but from one selfish, careless choice made in the wrong moment. That is what makes Brook possible role so emotionally powerful. She may not be a villain, but she may still be the reason lives were broken. At the same time, the story around her is filled with secrets that only make the atmosphere heavier. Isaiah is carrying lies of his own, especially as questions grow about where he was and what he was hiding when Jordan was brought in. His past with Jordan, his dishonesty to Stella, and the private truths he is trying to keep buried all add another layer of tension to an already fragile situation. In a world like this, secrets never stay buried for long. One lie pulls another lie behind it. One hidden detail invites more suspicion. Brook Lynn may think she can stay quiet and protect herself, but General Hospital has never been kind to people who believe silence will save them. The longer she hides, the more dangerous the truth becomes. What may hurt Brook Lynn most is that her panic will likely begin to show in ways she cannot control. People who love her may notice the fear in her face, the hesitation in her voice, the distracted look in her eyes whenever the accident is mentioned. Tracy may begin asking harder questions. Others may sense that Brook Lynn is carrying something too heavy to hide, and once suspicion starts to spread, every choice she makes will come under new scrutiny. Her late arrival at Charlie's pub, her strange mood, her uneasy memories, and her sudden horror when the crash is discussed will all start to mean something more. She may try to protect her new life, but in doing so, she could draw even more attention to herself. For an audience that has watched women on this show fight through heartbreak, family pressure, scandal, and impossible moral choices for years, Brook Lynn's story carries a special kind of sadness. She is not simply facing exposure. She is facing the collapse of the life she most wants to keep. That is what makes her fear feel so human. She is not just afraid of handcuffs. She is afraid of losing the right to love and raise the child who has given her hope. She is afraid that one terrible night will define her forever. She is afraid that when Phoebe grows older, the story told about her mother will not be about love or sacrifice, but about a secret, a crash, and a woman who ran from the truth. In the end, the emotional force of this story lies in the cruel question hanging over Brook Lynn's future. Can she hold on to Phoebe while hiding what she has remembered? Can she survive an investigation, a custody threat, and the weight of her own guilt without breaking apart? Or is this the kind of truth that destroys everything precisely because it arrives after someone has finally found something worth living for? That is why this storyline feels so gripping. It is not only about crime or punishment. It is about a woman who may have caused terrible harm, then discovered love too late to escape the consequences. And that kind of tragedy always hits hardest, because it reminds us that sometimes the past does not wait until we are ready before it comes to collect its debt. Brook Lynn did not expect that a single memory could begin to change everything she believed about herself. At first, it was only a quiet discomfort, a strange heaviness that she could not explain whenever the accident was mentioned. But slowly, the details returned with painful clarity. The glass of wine before she left, the late drive through the dark roads of Port Charles, the sudden moment when she had to react quickly, pressing the horn, turning the wheel, trying to avoid something she could not fully see. Now, standing in the present, she is no longer certain that she was just a witness passing by. There is a growing fear inside her that she may have been part of what caused everything to happen that night. What makes this realization even more frightening is not just the possibility of guilt, but the uncertainty surrounding it. Brook Lynn does not remember a direct crash, and she did not see two cars collide in front of her. But she remembers enough to understand that her actions could have forced someone else into a dangerous situation. A sudden reaction, a moment of panic, a decision made too quickly in the dark could have set off a chain of events that led to both accidents happening on the same night. This kind of responsibility is harder to face because it does not feel clear or simple. It lives in the space between intention and consequence, and that is where Brook Lynn now finds herself trapped. At the same time, her behavior after that night raises even more questions. She arrived late at Charlie's pub, and there was something off about the way she carried herself. She seemed distracted, unsettled, and unable to fully enjoy the moment. Looking back, it no longer feels like a coincidence. It feels like the reaction of someone who is trying to push away a thought that refuses to disappear. That uneasy feeling may not have come from nothing. It may have been the beginning of her mind trying to process what really happened before she was ready to face it. There is also the possibility that Brook Lynn did stop that night, even if only for a brief moment. If she saw Danny and Charlotte after their crash, she may have tried to help them in a quiet, careful way. The idea that the teenagers asked her not to call the police adds another layer to this situation. In that moment, Brook Lynn could have been caught between fear and responsibility. Calling for help would have been the right thing to do, but staying could have exposed her own condition after drinking. Leaving may have felt like the only way to protect herself, especially with so much at stake in her personal life. That decision, if it happened, would not come from cruelty, but from panic and self-preservation. What makes everything even more complicated is how this connects to her life now. Brook Lynn is no longer thinking only about herself. With Phoebe in her care, every choice carries a deeper weight. The thought of being investigated, of possibly facing legal consequences, is no longer just about reputation or freedom. It is about the future of a child who depends on her. This fear could explain why she is trying so hard to avoid the truth, even when it is beginning to surface on its own. The more she realizes what might have happened, the more she wants to run from it, because facing it could take everything away from her. Meanwhile, the situation around her is becoming more tense as others begin to question what really happened that night. Valentin's suspicion toward Charlotte is not random. He knows her patterns, her instincts, and her ability to hide the truth when she feels threatened. His doubt suggests that the story told by the teenagers may not be complete. If Charlotte is hiding something, then Danny may be doing the same. And if their version of events begins to fall apart, it could lead directly back to Brook Lynn and her unexplained presence on the road that night.